I met Julie when we were both 8 years old. Initially, we had a lot of play dates and went to each other's birthday parties because our moms, and later our dads, were good friends. Her dad was wealthy, the president of a tech company, while mine was upper middle class. Julie had long brown hair and these striking pale blue eyes that always caught my attention. In middle school, we both embraced the goth, emo style and were considered outcasts. Julie had short black hair and was a bit chubby, while I was a tall, skinny guy. I worked hard mowing lawns all summer and saved up to buy her a ceramic unicorn when I asked her to be my girlfriend. She said yes, and I was confident she would. Toward the end of 7th grade, she decided to change her look and social circle, and she made it clear that I needed to adapt with her or be left behind. So I changed too. By the end of our sophomore year in high school, Julie underwent a major transformation. She became physically fit from swimming, grew out her hair, and dyed it blonde. I also had a transformation thanks to braces, weightlifting with the football team, and participating in track and field. While I could have played football, Julie believed only fools played the sport, and I didn't have strong feelings either way. Although guys pursued Julie, she seemed loyal, or so I thought. She displayed public loyalty, but I later discovered she was getting intimate with guys from other schools at house parties, though I was oblivious at the time. Girls were interested in me too, but Julie would scare them off. She'd give them a subtle warning initially, then socially destroy them if they persisted. One girl was bullied so badly that she didn't return to school, but I never found out the full story. Honestly, I wasn't interested in any of those girls because Julie was way, way more attractive, and she knew it. The first big issue I had with her was at senior prom. I came out of the restroom and some girls approached me saying, "I'm so sorry, and what are you gonna do?" I asked what they meant, and they said Julie had slow danced with another guy and kissed him on the dance floor. I confronted her about it, and she convinced me it wasn't consensual. I was ready to go find the guy and beat him up, but she stopped me and said we should leave for a hotel. She had already booked a fancy room and said we were going all the way that night. We did it, and I can confirm she was innocent, and so was I. After we graduated, we both went to the same college. I studied computer science while she studied art history. I'd tease her about it. I got lucky and won a lottery for a great dorm room with its own bathroom. Julie, on the other hand, lived in a fancy condo nearby. She insisted on buying new hardwood furniture for my room, including a cool desk chair from her dad's office, a Herman Miller chair. Man, I miss that chair. She always bought clothes for me, even though I told her not to, and I'd get her little gifts too. During my 3rd year of college, I was hitting the books in the library when a buddy called. He sounded apologetic, saying he heard Julie and I split and invited me to a party with girls. I was like, "Hold up, what's going on?" He spilled the beans that he saw Julie at a party getting cozy with some dude, remember second base? And then she whisked him away to her car. He asked Julie about us, and she claimed we were over. After hanging up, I decided to confront Julie and headed to her condo. I had a key, so I let myself in. Loud music was blasting, and when I peeked into the bedroom, there they were. What really stuck with me was seeing her with his shirt over his head and her lipstick smeared all over his chest. I shouted, "What the heck?" as she gazed at me with a silly grin on her intoxicated face. Without thinking, I grabbed the closest breakable object, which happened to be the ceramic unicorn I gave her, and hurled it at her makeup table, shattering it. "Forget you, Julie, we're over!" I yelled as I stormed out with her calling after me. The next day she called, sounding sorry, but she tried to explain that we were on a break, and it was okay. I didn't understand what on a break meant. I figured it meant the same as broken up, so I snapped back, "Of course we're on a break," and hung up. She started seeing this guy, who had a reputation as a duck boy. They apparently had an open relationship, and she bought him clothes and stuff, just like she did for me, and she was spotted with other guys, but always with him. I was devastated and focused on getting top grades. I went out but didn't date anyone. I just went to parties occasionally. To cope, I got rid of anything that reminded me of her. I donated all the furniture and replaced it with cheap stuff from thrift stores. I had to start wearing thrift store clothes too because I got rid of all the clothes she bought me, which was about half of my wardrobe. I deleted all our photos and threw them away. I told my parents about what happened, and they, along with Julie's parents, wisely stayed out of it. I also told my parents and friends not to mention her around me. I wanted to forget about her completely. That's when someone told me about her hooking up with guys at parties in high school. About 9 months later, she broke up with Duckboy. The rumor was that he cheated on her at a party in front of a bunch of people. She was embarrassed and dumped him. Not long after that, she showed up at my door unexpectedly. She looked beautiful with a bright smile, holding the glued-together unicorn. I was shocked to see her. She asked if I had been robbed, noticing all the stuff she bought me was gone. I told her if she wanted the furniture, she better hurry to Goodwill. She seemed hurt. She showed me the unicorn, as if it symbolized fixing our relationship. I bluntly told her it looked terrible and that we were done. She tried to explain what on a break meant, but I didn't care. To me, we were finished. She started crying, but I insisted she leave. She started showing up at my classes, claiming we were meant to be together. I reminded her that soulmates don't cheat. She told our friends, and they pressured me to take her back because she was devastated. She sent me notes, letters, flowers, and candy, but I saw it all as garbage. Being around her physically hurt me, so I transferred to a different school at the end of the semester, cutting her out of my life completely. Perhaps I should have planned differently because I had to attend school for 2 extra years, since many of my credits didn't transfer. At the new school, I found myself enrolled in classes I had already taken, barely passing them because I spent most of my time in bed. My roommate, who wasn't a friend at the time but just someone assigned to the same dorm room, grew annoyed by my constant presence and concerned about my attitude, so he called campus police on me. While I didn't get into trouble, I had to see a counselor who diagnosed me with a major depressive episode and PTSD, suggesting that Julie might have a personality disorder or be a sociopath who manipulated and groomed me into dependency on her. I'm not sure if all that's true, but taking Zoloft definitely helped. I heard that Julie went to my parents' house looking for me. Despite them repeatedly telling her no, she became increasingly belligerent and hysterical until her own parents warned her to stop, or they would have her institutionalized. After graduating, I got a job and was transferred to Singapore, where I met my now wife. That's a whole other story. I was a passport bro before the term even existed. We got married when I was 35 and she was 26. Eventually, we moved back to the USA and had 3 kids. Things have been going great. Fast forward to yesterday. I rarely use Facebook except to occasionally share family photos or post some random thoughts. For example, I found a whole bowl of cereal in the sink today, so I guess we're Bezos rich now. I received a Facebook message from Julie with a photo of the unicorn, apologizing for what she did and for hurting me, saying she'll never get over me. I chose not to respond. I would never disrespect my wife like that. Instead, I blocked Julie. But what surprised me was my intense reaction. Pure, blinding rage. I punched the wall, denting the sheetrock, and was so furious that tears streamed down my face, my teeth clenched. I got a major headache. I swear if Julie had been there, I would have lost control. I'm not a violent person. I lied to my wife, saying I had to work late, and took a long, brisk walk downtown to clear my mind. I couldn't go home feeling like this. Now I'm calm, but I'm puzzled by my reaction. Isn't the opposite of love supposed to be indifference? I just don't understand how this happened. Maybe I need more therapy and Zoloft? Update. Based on suggestions from comments on my initial post, I discussed Julie with my wife. She knew about Julie before we got married, but I didn't fully explain how much the breakup affected me. I just mentioned that she cheated on me, leading to the end of our relationship. I showed my wife my Reddit post and told her about receiving the Facebook message from Julie and my reaction. She expressed concern and agreed with many of the comments that I should talk to someone about it. I reassured my wife that our 21 years together and our 3 kids were not just a trial run for me to get back with Julie, which made her laugh. She knows I dislike Julie. My wife brought up something I hadn't considered, that Julie probably emailed my Facebook email address. To clarify, I have a separate email address just for Facebook notifications, which I never check. To access it, I had to reset the password. Upon doing so, I found an email from Julie. After downing a gin and tonic for courage, I decided to read it, and it threw me for a loop. It's important to note that the Julie I knew in high school was a kind, beautiful girl, but the Julie I discovered after catching her cheating was a dishonest person. Upon learning that she had been fooling around with other guys behind my back in high school and college, I realized I couldn't trust anything she said. So, I read her email with extreme doubt. In her email, she talked about feeling abandoned by me at the end of junior year, feeling broken and lost as if her world had crumbled. She referred to me as her soulmate who had left her. She mentioned wanting to experience the freedom of college life, especially in bed, and proposed that we take a break. She hoped that we could both learn from other experiences and come back together for a better bed life, which I found to be a ridiculous idea. It seemed like her plan was for me to become some kind of expert while we were apart and then share what I learned with her while she explored new things too. After our supposed break ended and she returned, she realized that I didn't understand what it meant, and I thought we had broken up. She saw that I had removed everything related to her from my life, like gifts, photos, and furniture. This made her feel like she had lost me completely, and it devastated her. She was even more hurt when I continued to move on without her, and it affected her mental health so much that she had to seek help at an institution. Later, she moved to Europe to pursue a career as a fashion model. I must have missed the European fashion model booth at my school's career day. Maybe it was tucked away between the rock star and billionaire Playboy booths. She embraced the party lifestyle there, never tying the knot, and eventually returned to the USA after her last long-term fiancé called it quits. Moving back in with her aging parents to assist them, she stumbled upon a photo of us in a box while packing and felt the urge to reach out to me. What really gave me a jolt was her suggestion of meeting up for a drink to reminisce about the past. She claimed to forgive me for abandoning us and moving forward without her, expressing her belief that we're still soulmates and that our story isn't finished. She urged me to reply, but I couldn't help but wonder if there's something like eye sanitizer for situations like this. At that point, I had already scheduled an appointment with my son's psychiatrist, given his severe autism. Since my mom passed away 8 months ago, leaving my dad grieving, I called him up. He's now 91 and had been married to my mom for 71 years, knowing her for a total of 77 years. I brought up Julie, and he showed sudden interest, so I inquired about her. The situation went completely haywire. Dad didn't tell me because I insisted not to hear anything about Julie. After I cut ties with her, Julie repeatedly showed up at Dad's, begging for my whereabouts. Eventually, she resorted to holding a knife to her throat, threatening self-harm unless they told her. Dad restrained her, and Mom called her parents to take her home. Later, she was admitted to a mental health facility. Our families stopped talking after that, so that part of her email was true. Talking to the psychiatrist, she mentioned my anger outburst as a sign of PTSD, which I was diagnosed with years ago after I cut off Julie. I had effectively erased her from my life, but her sudden reappearance triggered everything again. It feels ridiculous to compare my situation to a combat veteran's, but that's what it is. The psychiatrist mentioned Julie probably has a cluster B disorder, where she sees herself as the main character, and the rest of us as supporting actors who must follow her script. Responding to her email would just add fuel to her drama, so therapy focused on PTSD is recommended. I've scheduled an appointment with a specialist. I checked with my wife, dad, and brother about responding to Julie's email, and they all sided with the psychiatrist. My brother suggested replying with just unsubscribe. The issue is, my last name is pretty unique. If you search my full name online, you'll find a few people in the US with the same name. A deputy sheriff friend told me you can't get a restraining order unless there's assault or a threat. Julie could easily find where I live, so I'm concerned she might track me down if I don't at least tell her to stay away. Edit. I've decided not to email her back. I blocked her email and preemptively blocked her on all my other email accounts. Thanks for the advice in the comments. I found a picture from her public Facebook profile. Despite the likelihood of using filters and choosing the best photos, she's still pretty attractive for her age, 55. Botox and plastic surgery seem to work wonders, I suppose. Shame she's so unstable. In some photos, she's with a younger woman with black hair and an olive complexion who seems to be her daughter. They share the same blue eyes. I shared the photo with my buddy, a sheriff's deputy, and my wife, who got a tad jealous. I reassured her that she's younger and looks great without any procedures. She's only about 10 pounds heavier than when we got married, and she earned that weight honestly by having our 3 kids, which earns her eternal respect in my book. My buddy, who's a sheriff's deputy, mentioned that law enforcement and politicians often keep their addresses private to avoid being tracked down at home. He suggested listing me as a volunteer with the sheriff's department if necessary. I might need to consult a lawyer about making my public records private, so she can't easily find my name and address on the property appraiser's website. Personally, I'm pretty annoyed that I have to live like some witness in a mafia movie, always watching my back for a crazy person.
All right, that was a fun story. Now let's move on to another exciting one. Stay tuned and let's dive in.
I'm Tamika, a 29-year-old homemaker. But don't box me in just yet. I'm all over the place with different gigs, though none stick for long. Routine? Nah, not my thing. Still, I hustle and make my own cash, even if it's not as much as Rain's. Speaking of Rain, he's my hubby of 2 years, a smart radiologist, but he's a whole decade older at 39. Now, you're probably wondering how this connects to my cheating, right? Well, Rain's got this muscular physique that first caught my eye, but reality hit hard when we got together. But I learned that the size of a man's tool cannot be determined by his muscles. Rain isn't as big as I thought down there, and our intimate life isn't that great either. He tries, but work drains him, leaving me wanting more. That's how I ended up in this mess. I knew Rain couldn't satisfy me like I wanted, but I settled because he ticked other boxes. I hoped he'd improve, but he never did. I put up with it, never straying until I saw Axel's impressive size. That's when the fear of missing out hit me hard. All right, folks, let me spill the tea about Axel. He used to be my affair partner, but now that's all in the past. He's the guy I strayed with while I was still married. Honestly, he's the one who got me all curious, pushing me to cross that line. I just couldn't resist finding out what it was like to be with a guy like him. Before I dive into all the juicy details, let me give you the lowdown on how I met Axel. So, like I mentioned earlier, I'm not one to stick to just one thing. I'm all about trying out different gigs, keeping it fresh. My friend Rachel is cut from the same cloth, so we teamed up as business partners. Recently, we dipped our toes into the world of online menswear. Yeah, I know it sounds odd, but trust me, I've dabbled in weirder ventures before. I'm always chasing after the latest trends and whatever brings in the cash. We've tried selling clothes and even women's wear online, but it was tough competition in the female fashion scene. Almost every store out there is flooded with women's clothing. Plus, we noticed that women tend to haggle more and pay less compared to men. That's when the light bulb went off. Men, they just order what they want. Price be damned. Take Rain, for example. He's a prime example of that. He'll order stuff without batting an eye, and I only find out later that he got ripped off. So, that's the vibe I wanted for my business. We took a shot at menswear, thinking it was just an experiment, but boy did it pay off. The profits blew my mind, and suddenly, I saw this as a business worth sticking with. I needed funds to snag a storefront and gear up with equipment. Rain didn't hesitate to give me the cash when I asked, which was rare because I hardly ever ask for money unless I plan to invest it. Thanks to his help, Rachel and I launched our store. And let me tell you, things got wild, folks. Business was on fire, and I was loving every minute of it. Sales were through the roof and customers were pouring in. A lot of the guys preferred to come in and try on the clothes themselves to make sure they fit just right. Rain mentioned it was because men often struggle to find clothes that fit well, especially around the arms and whatnot. Luckily, I had some extra space, so I set up a fitting room too. Rain was initially super supportive of the business and was a regular customer. But then, out of nowhere, he started spouting off about how a woman shouldn't be selling men's clothes. I brushed it off at first, but it started causing tension in our marriage. Looking back, I wish I had listened to him, because if it wasn't for this clothing gig, I never would have crossed paths with Axel. Axel was a regular customer who usually bought shoes and ties from our online shop. We mostly did business through Instagram, so he never had to come into the store in person. But one day, he decided he wanted to check things out firsthand, especially since he was worried about sizing issues. Turns out, we're both based in Canada, so it was convenient for him to swing by. When he walked into the shop, I was pleasantly surprised. It's not that he looked different from his Instagram pics or anything, he was just even more attractive in person. He told me he needed some basics like singlets, boxers, polos, and tuxedos, and luckily we had all that and more thanks to Rachel's husband's fashion sense. To cut a long story short, when Axel went to try on the boxers, that's when I got hit with major fear of missing out. And trust me, I'm not exaggerating when I saw his huge size. He's seriously big. He slipped on the boxers and singlet, then checked himself out in the mirror. That's when I couldn't help but notice the impressive size of his manhood. I was beyond shocked because I never expected that. I mean, I've never seen anything like it before, and I gotta say, he hit the genetic jackpot. It was a huge leap from what I was used to with Rain, so naturally my curiosity piqued. He tried on a bunch of boxers, and I found myself unable to look away. I know I probably sound like the biggest dork right now, but trust me, I'm just being real. I'm not proud of how I acted, but let's be real. I was practically powerless to resist. If I didn't give in to the temptation then, I'm pretty sure I would have caved eventually. Even Rachel kept nudging me, whispering about how impressive he was. We tried to keep our cool until he finished shopping and left. But once he was gone, Rachel couldn't help but bring it up again, going on about his size. I had to shut her down because I knew I couldn't trust myself not to spill the beans. I tried to play it cool, acting like I wasn't interested, but the truth was, I couldn't get him out of my head all day. I knew I was in deep trouble when I got home and couldn't bring myself to be intimate with my husband. It just felt like I was missing out on something, constantly comparing Axel's size to my husband's. I'd never been with someone as well endowed as Axel, and I'd been feeling unsatisfied with Rain for a while. So naturally, thoughts of Axel kept creeping in. The fear of missing out was driving me crazy, easily one of the most frustrating moments of my life. I know I'm probably going to catch a lot of flack from people, being a married woman and all, and I totally deserve it. I shouldn't have been having those kinds of thoughts about someone who wasn't my husband. But honestly, the curiosity was eating me alive. I felt like I just had to know what it was like because I'd felt like I was missing out for so long. And one day, I caved and decided to shoot Axel a message. He replied to my message a few hours later, and that's how our casual chat began. I brought up all sorts of stuff, like the new clothes in stock and our ongoing sales, just to keep the conversation flowing. Anything to keep it going, you know? And it worked like a charm. We started tossing around flirty remarks, and before I knew it, he was already asking for my address. I didn't give him my address right away. Instead, I asked for his. He gave it to me, and the very next day, I was on my way to his place. I just couldn't wait, even though I tried to resist. The curiosity was eating me alive, so off I went. When I got there, I realized Axel was quite the smooth talker. I made it clear up front that I was married, hoping to avoid any regrets later on, but he brushed it off like it was no big deal. Looking back, I kick myself for caving so easily. But in the moment, everything he said seemed too perfect, and he felt like the ideal guy. Next thing I knew, I didn't just sleep with him once. It happened 3 times that day. I even ended up spending the night at his place before finally heading home the next morning. Man, am I kicking myself now? I know I messed up big time. When I got back home, Rain and I had it out. It was like he could sense something was up and was ready to confront me. He went off, saying all sorts of things, and even hinted that I should shut down the store because it was leading me down a path I'd never been down before. I knew Rain would be upset about me spending the night at Axel's, but I never expected him to be as furious as he was. He said he'd been suspicious of my actions lately and demanded to know why I was being so secretive. Sure, I had to fib my way out of it because I was terrified of facing the truth. I mean, how could I confess to my husband that I'd been unfaithful? I knew Rain wouldn't just let it slide, and I feared it would wreck our marriage. Plus, losing him would be a massive blow because he was the only stable thing in my life. I couldn't bear the thought of losing him, so I kept up the charade for the 2 years we were married. I was too scared to speak up or explore other options. Part of me felt stuck with the man I married, even though things didn't turn out as planned. So, I chose to bury the fact that I cheated on him. Call me a coward, but it seemed like the safest bet at the time. It was easy to keep it under wraps because I figured I'd never cross paths with Axel again. I thought our fling was done and there'd be no reason for us to reconnect. I just went about my daily routine like nothing happened. I didn't even confide in Rachel because I didn't fully trust her. Despite being business partners, I couldn't bring myself to admit I cheated on my husband to her, or anyone else for that matter. I was too scared of the fallout. But keeping the truth hidden turned out to be a mistake because it came back to haunt me. I've learned the hard way that deceit is never the answer, and the truth has a sneaky way of coming out. You might manage to keep it hidden for a while, but eventually it'll come to light. And sure enough, the truth started leaking out through my strained relationship with my husband. I mean, things couldn't just go back to normal after I cheated on him. There were signs, and he could tell something wasn't right, especially with my lack of enthusiasm during our intimate moments. Before Rain, I'd only dated 2 guys in my life. The first was back in high school, and we never got intimate. The second was a 4-year relationship in college. Just goes to show, I didn't know what real romance was like until I married Rain. But after being with Axel and experiencing a whole new level of passion, I started resenting my relationship with Rain. I dreaded being intimate with him because it felt lackluster compared to what I had with Axel. At first, Rain was patient with me, but eventually, he grew frustrated and impatient. He kept pressing me about why I was avoiding intimacy, and I kept making excuses like feeling sick or tired. When we did get intimate, he could sense something was off. My reluctance dragged on for months before the truth finally spilled out. Honestly, it was long overdue. Rain is perceptive, and he started keeping a closer eye on me after that. I knew he was watching me, but I pretended not to notice to avoid raising his suspicions further. I acted clueless to keep him from getting more suspicious. Then one day, something unexpected happened. I got a call from Axel. I was stunned because we had agreed it was a one-time thing. Guys, no need to lecture me. I'm well aware of how foolish I've been. You don't need to rub salt in the wound. I made some mistakes that I'm not proud of, and I definitely shouldn't have done what I did. But in that moment, I was totally lost in my own thoughts, and I honestly thought I wasn't doing anything wrong. I figured fulfilling my own desires was just a natural thing, and I didn't see any reason to feel guilty about it. I really should have considered how unfair I was being to Rain. I mean, if he had been the one cheating, it would have crushed me. So after Axel called me, he suggested we go on a date. It struck me as odd because he wasn't one to take things slow, ever. Still, I decided to hear him out and go on the date. During our time together, he dropped a bombshell. He said he liked me. Yeah, he actually confessed his feelings. I was totally taken aback, especially since he knew I was married. I couldn't wrap my head around why he would tell a married woman he had feelings for her. Like, what was he expecting? Did he think I'd leave my husband and start something serious with him? But with all the issues going on in my marriage, I didn't want to complicate things further. So, I asked him to hold off for a bit while I sorted through my thoughts. After that day, he kept calling and checking in on me, but deep down, I knew I couldn't develop real feelings for him. I was drawn to what he offered, and, let's be honest, his skills in the bedroom. So, in the end, I caved. I tried to resist, but that fear of missing out kicked in again, and I just wanted to experience it one more time. It's messed up, I know, but my sense is finally starting to come back to me. Back then, I truly believed I was doing what was best for me. I met up with Axel one last time, spending another night with him. After that, I had to tell him I couldn't see him anymore because my husband was starting to catch on, and I couldn't risk raising any more red flags. Axel understood and agreed it was for the best. He promised not to contact me again and mentioned he was planning to leave Canada due to a work transfer. I deleted his number and left his place that day. I headed straight home, thinking Rain would be at work and wouldn't be home yet. But boy, was I wrong. When I got there, he was already waiting for me. Rain never skips work without a good reason, so seeing him there was a shock. You might be wondering why it bothered me so much that he was home. Well, the fact that I spent the night away and didn't come back got me worried. We'd had issues over this before, so I knew there would be trouble. I was certain Rain stayed home just to wait for me and confront me about staying out late again. And I was right. That's exactly what happened. He didn't even give me a chance to settle in before he started hurling hurtful words, accusing me of cheating. I was shocked because I never expected him to suspect me of cheating. It was a real blow to hear him say that. I knew he had his suspicions about my nighttime activities, but I never thought he'd connect it to my infidelity. It turned into a heated argument, and despite my best efforts to avoid admitting I cheated, it was all in vain. At first, he just kept pushing me to spill the beans. He wanted to know why I stayed out late again and why I didn't come home. He even asked where I spent the night when I didn't come home for the second time. Those questions really threw me off guard because I wasn't expecting them. I didn't think he'd be home, so I wasn't prepared to tell him what he wanted to know. During our argument, he accused me of acting like I was too good for him by denying him intimacy at night. He tried to tear down my confidence, so I got angry and blurted out that I was cheating on him with someone better. I told him he wasn't satisfying me, so I found someone who could. It wasn't until I said those words that I realized he was just trying to get me to admit the truth himself. He wasn't sure if I cheated. He just wanted me to confess, and I fell right into his trap. That's how my marriage came crashing down, guys. Rain was furious, and he nearly laid hands on me. I really admire his self-control for holding back. I shouldn't have rubbed it in his face, but my anger got the best of me. He kicked me out of the house that same day, and 2 weeks later, I was served with divorce papers. He didn't even bother talking to me in person, and I haven't heard from him since. I signed the papers, and now I'm just waiting for our court date to finalize the divorce. My stupidity and unnecessary curiosity has now ended my 2 years of marriage. Update. The divorce was finally settled about 2 months later. Before we officially split, Rain made sure to get back the money he invested in the store. Luckily, I was able to give it back thanks to the profits I made. He only communicated through his lawyer and never spoke to me directly after our last conversation when I confessed to cheating. I've been consumed with guilt and regret ever since. I wish I could undo everything, but it's too late now. I let my desires lead me down a path I deeply regret. It's true what they say. You don't realize what you have until it's gone. A few months ago, I never thought I'd miss my ex-husband like I do now. I thought cheating was the solution, but now I see how wrong I was. Looking back, I realize I should have never married Rain if I felt unsatisfied. It wasn't fair to him or to me.